You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, here is your host, Chris Voss. Wait, that's me. Hey, it's Chris Voss from the ChrisVossShow.com. Welcome to the big show, my family and friends. We certainly appreciate you guys being here. As always, we have another amazing author, very prolific on this show. She's done a lot of different books. We're going to be talking about her new book that's coming out next week. But in the meantime, always remember that you're by listening to the show, you're contractually obligated to refer 5 of your family and friends to your downline of listeners on the show. No, it's not like that. I'm just kidding. You know, I'm teasing you, but I also am guilting and shaming you. Tell your friends to go to youtube.com/Chris Voss, goodreads.com/Chris Voss, and LinkedIn/Chris Voss. See the LinkedIn newsletter over there. It's really cool. So now that I'm done with my guilting, shaming, and trying to wedge my audience into doing whatever they can. No, we really appreciate you guys. We love you guys, and we love you sharing the show. So thank you very much for that. Today, an amazing author on the show with us today. We have Ren DeStefano on the show with us. She is the author of the newest book, How I'll Kill You, which is something we all can learn from. It comes out March 21st, 2023. Ren, did I get your last name pronounced correctly?
No, but that's okay.
There,
we joined the club.
Ren DeStefano?
DeStefano.
Ren DeStefano.
It's a mouthful. I won't hold it against you at all.
I'll stick that in edit. And I made a note of it and still missed it. Ren DeStefano. Stefano.
You got it.
I just have to get it good for the cut.
We've got so much intro, so much energy. It's just a lot.
And the brain goes woohoo, like the whole thing just gets made up. So my apologies there. So your newest book is coming out. Give us a .com or wherever you want people to find you on the interwebs, please.
Yes. So I am on Instagram at Lauren, Lauren DeStefano, author.
There you go. And you, this is your first adult novel, but you've been doing other books since. Tell us a little bit about your background in writing books.
Yeah, I was really fortunate to get into young adult at the kind of big young adult boom of the Hunger Games era. Mm-hmm. And so I had my first novel, Wither, back in 2011. It sold in 2010, and it was just like more than I ever expected. I had just graduated from college in about 2008, and I had found an agent who believed in my work. And I was thinking, maybe if I get lucky, I'll have a trade paperback in my local bookshop. That was kind of my biggest dream at the time, just not expecting to keep the lights on with writing. And I was just really blown away by the reception to my debut young adult. And then I made the very silly, looking back, mistake of thinking, well, now I'm in publishing. Now I'm in. It's just going to be all cake from here. Every book I write will get sold. Not the case.
It's an interesting marketplace. I mean, sometimes some people like one thing and they don't like another, and you're like, but that was the same sort of genre. So you've written how many children's books?
Off the top of my head, I want to say 14.
There you go. That's a lot of children's books. Mm-hmm. That's pretty good. So what motivated you want to switch gears and move to an adult novel?
So I always knew I've always really been interested in true crime and thrillers and horror. Not that this is necessarily horror, but somewhere in that vein. And I knew that someday I wanted to write something really twisty and geared for adults. And, with the F-bomb or two, right? something I don't put in my children's books. And so for about 5 years, I had been attempting to write a thriller, but there's so many directions you can take, right? You've got the kind of gritty cop drama. You've got the small town horror. You've got the really kind of poetic mystery, all sorts of different angles. And it was really a struggle to find my voice. And something that I really find interesting is when we think about serial killers, most of the time they're flying solo. And so I thought, what would bond 2 or more serial killers? And would there always be that fear of, well, you know everything about me. Are you going to take us down together? What if one of us grows a conscience, right? And
Wow.
right, what would make you work together? And all I could think was a really strong, really unique sibling bond.
So you've made sibling sisters serial killers, is that correct?
Yes, it's 3 identical triplets.
And they're triplets.
Yes.
Triplets serial killers.
Mhm.
I think you've struck upon something that no one's ever really plumbed, at least that I know of. A serial killer is teaming up. You're right. Usually they're lone wolves.
Mhm.
Uh, so why do they? I mean, I don't want to give away the plot of the book, of course, but can you tease out anything on why they
Yeah.
turned down this road?
So I think a big part of their story ended up being that they grew up in the foster care system.
Oh.
So they were abandoned. Their parents never came forward to claim them. They still don't really know their origin. And when they were babies, it was this novelty. Wow, abandoned triplets. People love multiples on the news, all over kind of the talk show circuits. And then as they grew up, their lives were very real, and they became wards of the state and had very different and very difficult upbringings, where they often felt that they were not in control of themselves or their surroundings. And then as they became adults, as they were 19, 20, they started dating, looking for some stability in life, and found men that broke their hearts. And they realized, and that's, the heartbreaking, the reality of dating is something we all kind of deal with, right? A partner cheats on you, leaves you, just isn't interested anymore. But for them, after so much, it was like a final straw situation.
Yeah.
And
well, I mean, you plus you're, it's loss. You find love, you lost, and if you grew up, I suppose, in that environment of, not being around, people, accepting you or loving you, you kind of feel probably a bigger loss.
Yeah, I think it was just very much a cumulative lack of control, and they took it to just a very deep extreme, where one of them got this idea and the others said, well, we're all each other has, so I guess we're all going on this together.
We're all going on a murderous rage.
Pretty much.
With lots of murdering.
And because you have 3 people, it's 3 different approaches, right? So they're checking their tracks, and they're making sure that they don't get caught. They're being very careful.
That's one way to do it. I like that. So this is quite an interesting story. One of the I don't know if you call this a byline, but in the description, there's a line here that says, "Make him want you, make him love you, make him dead." Can you tease out a little bit about what that's?
Oh my gosh, my agent came up with that. That was in her pitch, and it worked.
I like it.
Yeah, so the rules, because they can't just be stabbing people willy-nilly, right? It's got to be very organized. And you have,
I'm writing this down too to keep notes.
Yeah, so 2 of the sisters are yeah, so this is not a self-help book.
I thought this was a self-help book. No, it's a novel.
No, you're gonna get us in trouble. No, so 2 of the sisters are kind of the reckless and impulsive ones, and they just want to go in and do what they're going to do. But the other sister, our narrator, she's the more cautious one, and she makes sure that everything gets cleaned up. She sets the rules. This is how we make sure that we don't end up in jail, right? And so one of the rules is we move to a town. We scope out. We don't stay in one place for long. We scope out a place that's kind of a small town. People don't lock their doors. Not a lot of security cameras or internet necessarily everywhere you go. And then you fall in love. You make a man fall in love with you. And you sustain your alibi. You get some character witnesses. You get people to like you. And then this mysterious boyfriend just disappears one day, and then you're gone.
So in the story, are the protagonists basically the 3 young girls?
Yeah, so it's one sister in particular does all of the narrating. But I picked her as the narrator because she's the one who observes and sees what everybody else is doing.
So is there an antagonist? Is it anybody who I'm not sure what you can tease out, but is like anybody who comes after them, or
You might
sniffing
say
around.
that. I think, well, the narrator, a lot of the time, and you don't learn her real name until the end. She goes by many AKAs. They're very careful about that as well. But I would say that she refers to herself as the predator because she happens upon this really sweet town, this really nice kind of warm community that takes her in and welcomes her. And she meets her, her Mark, this man that she's planning to kill. And he's really kind and he's vulnerable and he's pretty much what she'd be looking for under normal circumstances.
Yeah.
She's the only one that's going to ruin it.
Wow. That's just unfortunate. He seems like a nice guy. I don't know. But, so they go through this whole thing, and I suppose the adventure of everything they go on. Any other tease outs of how the plot goes? One thing with novels, we can't give away too much, or else we give a whole thing away.
I think we can tease out quite a bit, but I think it's more you have to kind of decide whose side you're on, right? Because a lot of things would lead to her facing justice and lead to her and her sisters ending up in jail. And her objective is to keep that from happening. Wow. And so it's who are you rooting for, really? And then you decide who the antagonist is from there.
Wow. This sounds pretty interesting. I've never heard a concept of this, of putting serial killers together and triplets of all things. I'm going to be wary of ever dating anybody who's a triplet from here on out. You've probably scarred me.
One of the things that was a lot of fun too is, this is to say, a 25-year-old woman, just pretty unassuming, just looks like your average person walking down the street. And so she mentions a few times in her narrative, it's not just the dark shadows at night. It's not just the creepy man that's following you out to your car in the parking lot. It could be anybody, anywhere.
Yeah. Anybody, anywhere. And that's the danger.
It's fun.
Very interesting and a great tease. So, I mean, when you wrote the book, did you base the characters on any maybe movie stars or people in your life that you kind of peeled some of the characters off of?
I didn't. I did. So it's a small church town that she scopes out. And I think like a lot of creative types and writers, I ended up having one of those religious upbringings. And I grew up in sort of a church community that I don't necessarily associate with so much in my adult life, but I learned a lot in my time there. And I really did put a bit of that into this.
Did you have to study triplets and twins and how they, I don't know, interact with each other?
Oh, a little bit. I have a lot of twins in my family.
Oh, do you?
So no triplets, but twins. And so I think what I aimed to make unique about this is that even though they're identical triplets, they grew up in different homes, in different environments because of the foster system. So our protagonist, she grew up in kind of a nuclear foster home that really tried to help her and cared for her. And her two sisters were not as fortunate. They ended up in a lot of group homes or kind of toxic situations.
Wow.
So they were all very much impacted by the different ways they were raised.
Note to self, cancel that adoption that I was.
Oh, no, don't do that. No, there's no self-help in those at all. I don't advise anybody to do anything that's.
I don't want to get near triplets anymore. You've scarred me for that. So I'm kind of at this point going, yeah, no, I don't know about triplets or twins anymore. But it's an interesting story and setup you have. What made you feel what in the structure of this novel, doing an adult novel as opposed to children's novel? What was different for you in writing it, or maybe how you approached it differently?
So I think and this isn't true for all children's authors, so I'm only speaking for myself here, but in my children's books, I really aimed to have a clear parable, maybe a moral message. So here's the character, here's the spunky teenage girl that's going to save the world, for example, right? A lot of this is good versus evil, and really kind of at the end of the day, a clear villain. But I think in adult, I was aiming not only for adult, but also this is my first time not really writing a fantasy. So I was writing about kind of the modern day here and now. And so I was really trying to capture the world we live in today, but maintain some escapism. Understand that people don't necessarily want to read about what they see on the news every day. Yeah. But I really, it's very morally gray.
It sounds like it.
Yeah. The hero of the story is a serial killer, so you decide whether you want her to fail or succeed.
Do you think this will identify with a lot of women? I've had girlfriends tell me that when we were breaking up, they were like, "I wish I could kill you because I don't want to ever see you with another woman." And
No, I
always
really
found that
think,
disturbing.
I think that if they were serious, they wouldn't tell you.
Well, that's probably true. That's
Yeah.
probably explains
They
why
gave
my
you a heads
coffee
up there,
tastes
so
like arsenic right now.
just be careful starting your car, I guess.
Yeah, starting my car and we had someone on recently who did a book, an author who did a book on a true story in Hungary, I believe it was, of arsenic murders, and there was like 160 to 300 murders, and this lady was like a drug dealer for arsenic. She would make
Mhm.
arsenic and give it to the wives in the area, and they offered a ton of husbands.
Mm.
And
There's
so
yeah.
so there's a lot of murder going on with wives and girlfriends, evidently. So this should help as a manual.
Well, statistically, I think that women are more likely to murder using poison.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean,
I'm not sure why that is, but that seems to be the case.
maybe they like the slow death of it, where you get sick and
It might be
somebody.
it might just be that it's cleaner. You walk away. You're not
That's
necessarily
true. That's
committing the
true.
act. Yeah.
Much more smarter sort of murder, if you will.
There was that back in the 80s. The reason we have those safety seals on aspirin now is a woman poisoned her husband with cyanide. She put it in his aspirin, but she
That's
put it in a
right.
few other random bottles just to make it look like a sort of a fluke at the factory.
Yeah, and now we all can't get the lids off, and
Yeah,
there's
the little
there's
foil
that.
thing.
You almost have to have like a butcher knife just to get into the seal pack on the
And
top.
there's that warning: do not use this if this is punctured in any way. You know.
Yeah. So I guess probably some boyfriends were hurt in the writing of this book. Then is that how it worked out?
I mean, I've been fortunate enough that all my breakups were pretty peaceful.
Oh,
So,
I was referring to the boyfriends in the book.
so you won't hear from them because they're dead.
Because they're dead.
They're dead.
Wow, man.
You only get one side of things, unfortunately.
Wow. Do you see yourself doing a follow-up novel using the same characters, maybe?
Never say never.
Never say never. There
Right.
you
At the
go.
moment, no, but the way it ends, it would be a little difficult. But
This would be kind of an interesting movie. It'd be like Carrie ×3.
yeah, I think there's. I loved Carrie. I grew up on horror films, and I love Stephen King. So
So did any of that have an influence then on you? On the
probably.
Probably.
My dad was really into like the classics, so Hitchcock, and things like that. And he would show me these old horror movies, and I would think, oh, these. I was 10 years old, 11 years old, and I was
What
thinking,
kind of father is this?
the best. And I would say, Dad, these are really slow. These are really boring. And he took that as a challenge. He's like, we're going to get a scary movie. We're going to show you something. And so we watched like pretty much everything: The Shining, Harry, The Birds, Cujo, whatever it was. And for me, it was scary, but it was really fun.
Mm-hmm.
And I always had that sense in horror that you don't see anywhere else is what is going to happen next. Like, this is so preposterous. I don't think I'll ever be trapped in a car with a rabid dog.
Yeah.
But how can this possibly end? I need to know, and so I think that did impact probably.
There you go. Do you think that contributed maybe your writing is setting up that next what might happen next sort of scene?
I have been told that that's the case with my writing sometimes, that a lot of people will, even in my children's books, that I take things in a direction that they weren't necessarily expecting.
There you go. Now you use a different name on your children's books, don't you?
I go by Lauren. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So that helps people. They can find your books. Do you think you might have some transfers that they'll discover that you've written a different book from your children's books? Maybe they're old enough now where they can make the jump.
I would imagine, yeah, because I began in 2011, and that was my most well-known book, the one that I published in 2011. And the readers now are in their 20s, 30s. They've reached out and let me know that they're always looking for my next book.
That's good. They've finally grown up, so now they can just get your next book and run with it.
There are a lot of, I think when I was a teenager, I read a lot of teen books, but I also read a lot of books kind of geared more towards adults. So I think there's always that crossover audience that will find you.
Yeah. And that would be good for you because you can just get that original audience going.
Mhm.
Stuff. We've had a few people that have used different names for romance novels crossing over into normal novels. I don't know, normal novels. That sounds weird to say, but we've had people that have done that, and their audience usually finds them out, and they're just like, I don't even know why we're bothering doing this.
It's not really meant to be a secret. I decided to go
Yeah.
by Ren just because I don't want, some excited 12-year-old who loves my books to pick this up and then be startled and have angry parents.
Her mom's calling you.
Yeah,
Yes,
upset parents.
So now they're murdering people too.
Yeah, so delineation, I think it's important to have the two. I can acknowledge one, but also separate the other.
There you go. Well, this has been really insightful. Anything more you want to tease on the book before we go?
Oh, I think I'm going to write more books about the people next door who seem safe and then they're not.
That seems like a good plot. I've had a lot of people next door to me that aren't safe and are not. In fact, we were next door one time to someone. Here's a plot for you. We're next door to somebody who was a real big, what they like to call a Karen. And she was the head of the homeowners association in Las Vegas.
Association.
And,
that's a novel right there.
Yeah, if you ever come with a murder story for people like that,
I've known some Karen.
You might be tapping a vein, kill either the killer could be the head of the HOA, or maybe the neighborhood just gets sick of him. Then the neighborhood gets together and
that's probably the more likely.
It's like Caesar; they all murder him. I think maybe I just got a book. Maybe I got a book.
You're writing your book right now. Don't give it away. Don't let somebody steal your idea. You got it.
Well, it's been very wonderful to have you on. Thank you for coming on and sharing your story and this amazing new book launch we've got coming up here.
This has been so fun.
There you go. That's what we try and do. The book is out next week, so order up so you can be the first in your book club to brag that you read it first. How I'll Kill You is out now. And thank you very much, friend, for coming on.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mounts, for tuning in. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, youtube.com/Chris Voss, and all those crazy places we are on the interwebs. Stay safe, be good to each other, and we'll